The field was geared towards connecting to something beyond ourselves, this unlimited field of all potential that we have access to, but in day-to-day life may be something that we're not always utilizing music, sound, or vibration to do that, to connect to that expansive energy that moves beyond us. My goal was really to take people to another level, to a different state of consciousness, combined with Hemi-Sync. Obviously, a lot of our work together, is targeting the heart. Most of my compositions in the meditative space are at about 60 beats per minute. And what we've seen over the last 10 years as well, a lot more discussion around heart-brain entrainment, neurocardiology. They're not independent of each other, they're working together, and I really wanted to bring that in within the field as well. You have access as a listener to tap into that energy beyond knowledge and to move into states where you're getting great ideas and bringing in new information, and you can feed your passion, your giftedness, your mission, whatever you're here to do. That's what I would use the field for, to connect to that energy.
Welcome to Focusing In. I'm your host, Garrett Stevens. Our guest today is Barry Goldstein. Barry's been on the show several times in the past. We are pretty much always talking about how music intersects with meditation, sleep, well-being, and modern science. Barry's worked with many of the leading self-help figures of our time, including Dr. Joe Dispenza, Neil Donald Walsh, Dr. Dan Amen, Anita Moorjani, and others. In more mainstream musical pursuits, Barry co-produced the Grammy-winning 2005 album 69 Freedom Special with the iconic Les Paul. He's a longtime Hemi-Sync artist, known for Wisdom of the Heart, Your Heart Song, Pieces of Heaven, Lunar Lullabies, and one of the all-time Hemi-Sync bestsellers, Cosmic Consciousness. So today, we're here to specifically talk about his long overdue follow-up to that album. It's entitled The Field. And so we'll be talking about The Field, both as an album and as a broader metaphysical concept. So I think you'll enjoy the conversation. Here's Barry Goldstein. Barry, welcome back once again. Thanks for continuing to collaborate with us. We're here today to talk about the newest album called The Field. For those of you that might not be familiar, Cosmic Consciousness was kind of the debut album in this, what we'll call Cosmic series. It came out over 10 years ago now, which is hard to believe. It is still, after all these years, at least last year, it was your best-selling Hemi-Sync album. So I think it is long overdue for a second piece, a second act. So maybe just start by telling us a bit about The Field, how it came to be, what was the creative process that led up to it?
Sure. Well, the field was geared towards connecting to something beyond ourselves, this unlimited field of all potential that we have access to, but in day-to-day life may be something that we're not always utilizing music, sound, or vibration to do that, to connect to that expansive energy that moves beyond us. And Cosmic Consciousness definitely was an awareness that came in as well, that there was another side of compositions for me that was definitely focused on the unknown and tapping into that field of energy. And Cosmic Consciousness was used very successfully in a lot of different domains. Dr. Joe Dispenza used it in several meditations and was primarily used to connect to that unseen, that unknown, that vast body beyond ourselves. And we found that people were having these amazing experiences with Cosmic Consciousness. So as I delved into creating something that could continue within that type of composition, my goal was really to take people to another level, to a different state of consciousness that went beyond the first one as well, and to also find a synchrony or a way to actually embody that, not just connecting beyond ourselves and going out of body per se, but how do we bring this back down to earth and embody it in our day-to-day lives. And that's really what the field was for me. Create a definitive piece where people could connect through sound, but also to move into rhythm with what they were doing, and you might hear some of that are in within the field. It's not just a continuous, you know, singular composition, but there are definitely elements within a soundtrack similar to a film where you're going into different levels of attunement within the field. And yeah, and combined with Hemi-Sync, obviously, really taking it to next level with a lot of our work together, you know, is targeting the heart because I most of my compositions in the meditative space are at about 60 beats per minute. And what we've seen over the last 10 years as well, a lot more discussion around heart-brain entrainment, neurocardiology. They're not independent of each other, they're working together, and I really wanted to bring that in within the field as well.
Definitely the heart brain coherence. I thought it might be helpful just to have kind of a conversation about some of these terms, cosmic consciousness, the field, because they get bandied about quite a bit in, self-help, spiritual development circles. And I mean, just for me personally, so like cosmic consciousness kind of has this, indivisible fundamental quality to it. Whereas the field is a term that I hear used a lot, in work schools. And I mean that kind of like in like a broad sense, places, organizations that emphasize self-development, inner work, spiritual development. And so the field for me always has kind of this community aspect to it. It's about multiple individuals. And so I don't know if you have thoughts about that in terms of the experience of cosmic consciousness versus a field effect. But I just thought I'd open it up.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I think it does start to move more into a collective with the field as well. So when I think about music in general, and sound and frequency are all carriers of information, and there is a strong collective around it as well. So that carrier of information starts with the composer. What state am I in when I'm creating music? And I'm connecting to that field and while I'm doing it. So music for me is not just a compositional practice, it's a spiritual practice. And for me, it is my meditation. So when I'm composing, inviting something in beyond myself has been an integral part of why I do music on a very self-rewarding way. I do it to keep myself grounded, to keep myself sane, right? And there's a lot of noise out there. So it's part of that practice. So in that intention of creating the field, I brought that into the creative process where I was connecting to that field. And what happens, as you well know, and it's really interesting, is that music creates a field of its own. So I brought the field in to the music, but doesn't it get collective? Doesn't it get magnified? Every person that listens to it and uses it in some way that's beneficial, that music piece begins to create a whole field of its own as it's fed more information from individuals. There's a collective that forms within it. And personally, I think like within cosmic, like using cosmic consciousness as an example, as it went out of the studio where I experienced a healing process through that, does the field within the piece of music itself grow as more people listen to it, more beneficial experiences happen? It continues to broaden and ripple out to help more people. So it's almost like the music starts to create a field of its own. And it is very much related to community because there's a specific community that finds growth within the pieces and is using it for different things. And then all of a sudden it opens up to something beyond what we expected. And I think like we're close to having 1 million streams with cosmic consciousness.
I'd
As
say it's
well as
actually, like when you look across, like I think that's just YouTube. Like when you look across platforms, I think it's into several million now. Like,
yeah, it's into
yeah,
several million of people. So is that field stronger now,
right.
right? And when it was released initially, and my thought is yes, because it's finding more and more resonance as it goes on. As someone tells it to someone else, the the field that I connected to also expands here, in a more grounded way beyond that, the essence of what's out there to what's in here. It affects us inwardly and then moves to create its literally its own frequency and vibration of its own. Just like a book, right? One person reads a book, it changes, doesn't it? If it becomes all of a sudden, like look at the Four Agreements, right? What happened when that was it was around for a lot of years. Then it went on Oprah, and all of a sudden now you have millions of people who were exposed to it and millions of people who did the work within it. Doesn't that shift consciousness? Doesn't that book create a field and a methodology all on its own?
Yeah, there's definitely this gestalt that forms around ideas, around creative products that gets magnified as people kind of start to share in it. I guess in terms of kind of building on what you were saying and thinking about field effect, like if I think of it in terms of like a room of people, right? Let's say a bunch of people are gathered in a room, and they're all kind of in conventional consciousness. They're externally focused. They're kind of sizing each other up. They're thinking about, how can I impress these people, make them laugh? Like, how can I manipulate the situation to my advantage? How do I compare? When the focus shifts inward, there is the space that is created, a space that exists between the myriad thoughts you might be having about how you're going to manage your experience. And in that space, there is stillness. And you start to realize that there is something essential within you that is shared with everyone else in that room. And that shared experience creates a network effect, right? And you begin to realize that on a fundamental level, you're kind of the same as everyone else in that room. And the people that are still externally focused in that room might not see that or feel that right away. But by the very fact that they're in that room with some people that are, it makes it easier for them to access that inner space. And that to
Right,
me is field effect, right?
right,
And
right,
then,
absolutely.
and then kind of like the next layer down from that is you realize that it doesn't even matter that you're all physically in the same room because consciousness is non-local. And so that's, I think, where kind of music like this comes in. People can have access to this field effect, as people are listening to it independently around the world, asynchronously, it's still happening. The field effect is still happening.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And a friend of mine, Phil Gruber, who would always say, he said, if you want to do the New York Times crossword puzzle, it's a lot easier to do it on Sunday night
Yeah, yeah, right.
because because at
People
that
have
point
solved it.
all the answers are already out in
Yeah,
consciousness,
you just
right?
gotta go get them. Yeah,
Someone already has done it,
yeah,
and you can tap into that energy. So I think it's similar, and I think for me, what's really valid and useful in this day and age, and why I created the field as well, is there's so much information out there that we have access to, right? It's very information is very easily accessible. What things that we know already that have been in consciousness. And when we look at AI, right, it's the perfect example. But if you even go back 50 years to our, I won't say obsession, but our focus on obtaining knowledge when they were going door to door with encyclopedias, like encyclopedias were the chat GPT of their day. Oh my God, I can access all this information within however many volumes. Right? Think about that now in relation how much information that we have, and it's very useful. What we know is very useful, and but it's not necessarily knowledge is not necessarily wisdom. And there's the two different areas within there. What we know, but what do we want to tap into beyond what we know? And this has been, decades or hundreds of years old exploration that we've seen in some of the most amazing inventors, the most amazing artists, the most amazing musicians in the world. Are they tapping into something beyond themselves, something what they don't know? And even within Einstein, within excerpts of what they knew about his creative process and even music, was that he was a violin player and also played piano. And that when he would get stuck in the process of his knowledge and want to move through blocks, he would utilize music in that way and pick up the violin or play chords. And he talked about it all the time. If he were not a physicist, that would have been his life focus, would have been on music. Same thing with Mozart, who said to have, like, when he did a composition, it was all in one time. He would be writing, it's almost like he would be dictating it right down, and getting downloads. Same with Tesla. They talked about his processes and downloads. So accessing what we do now is great, but in this day and age, for me, I find it a break. Like, I want to get out of that state of reading and obtaining information. It's all fascinating. I love it. I go down rabbit holes with it, but I want to connect to that vastness beyond me, where I slow my brain waves down and I move past my analytical. And it's what athletes call the zone, or we call flow state, is accessing the incorporation of what we know and what we don't know. And we see it in athletes. When they're in flow states, aren't they tapping into everything that they've learned up until that moment? Their mastery of practicing on the court, thousands of free throws over and over again, so that they can get to that place where they forget it completely and they move on autopilot. And that's really the sweet spot, is combining what we do in matter, what we're here, what we've learned, all our autobiographical memories, and get so good at it, then we could then say, I know absolutely nothing, right? This is an experiment. What else do I need to know? What else can I have access to that can be helpful here? And when you invite that in, which is what part of my process when I'm here in this room creating, I invite God in to create with me, because I know that if I'm connected to that, I will never have a creative block. Because when you tap into the energy of creator, there are no creative blocks. And look around us in nature, right? No flowers are exactly the same. Listen to all the sounds and everything around us. So that's the energy of the field that we're tapping into, that I wanted to bring in, that you have access as a listener to tap into that energy beyond knowledge, and to move into states where you're getting great ideas and bringing in new information, and you can feed your passion, your giftedness, your mission, whatever you're here to do. That's what I would use the field for, to connect to that energy and to bring it into create something amazing in the world, whether it's a moment with your kids or your husband, or it's the next bestseller, or you're the next new thought leader out there. Whatever it is, this is going to give you a way to access it in a different way. And that's what I love about it.
A lot of good nuggets in there. Let me see if I can unpack and build on that. So it was Tesla himself that said, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of frequency and vibration. You brought up AI, the idea that knowledge is not wisdom. So the other day, I think maybe even just yesterday, like, my wife was listening to this viral song video on, I think, Instagram. It was like a self-affirmation type song. It had a very catchy beat, positive messages. And she realized it was built by AI. Like, do you think we're going to start to see AI building songs that connect us to cosmic consciousness or the field, something beyond us?
Well, I think the point to discuss, and the point that could get exciting, is, it doesn't have to be either or. And that's the key, right? We don't just tap into knowledge or just tap into wisdom. And I did a whole talk in the United Nations called EASY. I created an acronym for that. To further discussion about this, is EASY stands for Emotional and Spiritual Intelligence. And so ultimately, when I hear things through my ears as a producer, I know where I want people to feel things in different areas. Okay, this is the section I want to do this. I'm going to accomplish that by breaking it down very minimalistically and put a beautiful cello over just a very soft pad. I know by feeling it, and I'm doing this for over 35 years, of what might create resonance or an emotion in those areas. So the question becomes, do we all have the same lens? Someone who's just creating a text to music prompt in Suno and saying, create this for me, right? Is that going to have the same potency as someone who knows how to steer the ship? Because ultimately we're taking people on a journey. Do you know how to steer the ship and embed your emotional and spiritual intelligence within that? So it becomes, for me, anything I create, any collaboration, this is with humans as well. If it doesn't take people on a journey where they're moving to a place of transformation and they're moving to what I call a vibrational upgrade, where after they've listened to it, they've walked out better than when they listened to it before, then I'm really not interested in it. So that becomes, this distinction is the same for me. If I can create that and there could be a synergy that is more powerful than either one of us could have created on our own, then let's have a discussion. I don't know whether I'll use it in putting my music out or not, but I've been experimenting because that's what I do as a producer. I've always had to utilize the latest tools to see if I could translate it into something that could be beneficial for my audience. And even at the beginning of drum machines, at the beginning of recording digitally, which we all do now, right? And at the beginning of synthesizers that were made available to us within home recording studios. Like, I've been in every stage of that in my career, and also worked with Les Paul, who was like the inventor of the electric guitar, right? And we won a Grammy together. I co-produced the track that won the Grammy for Best Rock Instrumental, and Les literally was a creator of multi-track recording, which was like so far ahead of its time. He created the first loop generator on his guitar that allowed people to multi-track and loop, which didn't was so far beyond this time. He called it the Les Pulverizer, and it enabled him to record three-part harmony on his guitar with Mary Ford. And then this is in the 40s, right? Looping didn't happen till like 60 or 70 years later. So when you think of that in context of what the possibilities are, you always have to look on it that it could create benefit, but we're moving through a lot of noise. And there needs to be regulation. It needs to be done in integrity. We need to be licensing artists' likeness and recognition in the right way. It was started on shaky ground, and now it was started on the premise of ask no questions and then ask for forgiveness later.
Right. That's how this whole thing has moved, like going back from like Napster to now. Like that's
Right.
the
And,
industry.
and right, it's very similar with, I won't name the name of the main music platform, but ultimately it's going to be regulated. We're already seeing it, that Spotify is beginning to verify legitimate artists, is taking down spam upgrades. And the bottom line for me is have to have you have to have integrity within it as a person who's sharing it, and your audience, whoever it is, whether it's Hemi-Sync or me or whatever, your audience trusts you, and that's important. So personally, from my background, I only put out things that are of the highest quality and of the highest nature. I'm not a guy who turns around things. You might know this from working with me, right? I'm not the guy who's going to like churn it out in 24 hours. So it's never going to be a time saver for me. But I always have to look at what will push my creativity to the max. So I just remain open and see where it leads.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, some really good thoughts in there. And for the most part, I think that's right. Like right now, AI is just another tool in the quiver for a producer or a composer. There's still a human prompting it to kind of make these changes along, this arc of experience or along this track. I don't think we're too far removed though from being able to, compose music in the style of Barry Goldstein, and like Barry Goldstein should get paid for that, I think. But
Yeah, and
yeah,
I'll tell you one thing though, from my experience, it's it's hard for AI to do this type of music, believe it or not, in the layers. I've done some experimenting with it, and because it hasn't been trained on this type of music yet, probably shouldn't even say that. Because you know why? Because it's not commercially viable for most people. They're focusing on 4-minute hits, right? And we're putting out long form music that's an hour. It's not like an attractive financial model
Yeah.
on Spotify,
You're right.
right? As you know, you're getting 0.005 cents on every stream when
For
they listen
60-minute
to like
streaming, yeah.
cosmic consciousness. So when I find that uh, I played around with it, it always creates something much more complex. It doesn't know how to be quiet.
Hmm.
There's always this new agey piano in it, and it's not the nuances that I would incorporate into the type of music that I do. Now, when you move more into pop music, it's doing,
Right.
yeah. I mean, like you said, you listen to a 4-minute song, and it was pretty good, right?
Yeah.
And in
Pop or
terms
hip
of that,
hop, it's gonna eat
yeah,
that up
yeah.
first. That's for sure. Cool. Well, anyway, any upcoming events, drops, courses we should know about? What's going on with Barry Goldstein?
Yeah, well, I'm part of a movie that's coming out that's called Pillars of Power, where I was brought in as the sound expert for that. That is going to be a pretty amazing movie. It has some of the same people in it who were in the original Secret, including Michael Bernard Beckwith and Jack Canfield, John DeMartini, John Asseroff, Lisa Nichols, and that's coming out shortly, probably by the time our album comes out. And yeah, I'm creating a lot more educational pieces and also things that come back into mainstream. So developing some things for children. I think that we need to bring music in back into schools and utilize it even beyond what we were doing, not just to learn instruments, but to create emotional regulation at early ages within allowing kids to learn how to process emotion because we're pretty much moving through a lot of bypassing of emotions in our world today, and then kids don't know how to navigate when they get to college, navigate specific emotions. So I'm creating a body of work around that, and yeah, very excited about the field as well. That is as we said is coming out shortly. One thing I did want to give a little bit more insight to the field as well, just from a musical standpoint too. That within the musical piece itself, it goes through connecting to the field. It goes through synchronizing with that field. So there's sections of it similar to a film that has specific themes that go through the hour-long piece. It has that a very nice period of time, the first 20 minutes, where they can connect and get into the effects of the Hemi-Sync as well, because it takes a certain amount of time to really synchronize with that. So the first 20 minutes are this amazing connection to that. Then there's a synchronization where there's these little elements of like trance type rhythms that come in to allow that heart brain connection. Then there's another section that then moves into even elevating, almost like a second attunement that then brings you, now that you're in synchrony and rhythm with that, into connecting to the divine on a higher level, where you're hearing like these more thematic sounds, horns, noble horns, beautiful strings that open up the heart space and really allow you to expand and connect the inner heart with that external heart beyond you. And then there's a whole process then of integrating that with these trance-like rhythms and harmonics so that you can then bring the energy of that into your daily life. So the energy of bringing heaven to earth embodiment, not just connecting to the field, but bringing the field into your own reality on a three-dimensional level as well. So I just wanted to give a little additional insights, just because we don't have, you guys do, you still have CDs and album covers, but you don't always get the ability to hear like what the composer was thinking, within albums anymore. We rarely see like liner notes, within, like we used to within albums. And we used to, buying an album, a 12-inch record used to be
Whole
this
experience.
whole
Yeah.
experience
Yeah.
of like opening those liner notes.
Yeah.
That's where you would have heard that, that I just said,
Yeah.
was in the liner notes. So maybe this can act as your liner notes, or maybe we, here's something, Garrett. I'm just going to put this out there. I think it would do really well. I think we should put like Cosmic Consciousness on a limited edition like vinyl
Vinyl.
record.
Yeah, I used to love trying to figure out like where you had to like drop the needle to like get just the right song you wanted, and
Yeah, yeah, and maybe for the whole Cosmic series. But I think people are getting back into vinyl again as well, but not with this type of music necessarily.
yeah, then we could do like a 11-year anniversary release. We'll call it 10 years since 11 doesn't pack quite the same punch. But yeah,
So if
that's
you're listening to that and you would like that, raise your hand or make a comment.
make a comment. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I was listening to the field before we came on, and descriptions, words only go so far. If you guys are listening to this, feel drawn to it, definitely check it out yourself. There is no substitute for direct experience. Yeah, but Barry, thanks once again for collaborating with us and for having this conversation, and I'm sure we'll do it again soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Garrett. Love you guys and love what you're doing, as you know.
Yeah, thank you.